these turbulent and chaotic times, the greatest challenge we face is not the overwhelming events around us, nor the cacophony of opinions and distractions flooding our senses. The true test of our character is whether we can remain unmoved by the disorder of the world and maintain a steady, calm mind, focused on what truly matters. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us in his Meditations, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The world will always present obstacles, but it is our response to them that shapes our virtue. It is not about disengaging from the world or retreating into apathy, for that would be contrary to the Stoics' duty to the common good. The key to living a virtuous life is not to turn away from the suffering of others, nor to ignore the injustices of society, but to focus our efforts on what is within our power and influence, while recognizing that we are bound to a larger, interconnected whole. The Stoics believed that justice, the act of giving each their due, is the most fundamental of all virtues, for without it, all other virtues falter. Courage, when applied to an unjust cause, is nothing more than recklessness. Discipline, when directed towards selfish aims, becomes mere rigidity. And wisdom, if not guided by justice, can lead us astray. Seneca warns us, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." We must ask ourselves, in what cause are we directing our energy? Is it a cause that benefits the whole, or is it driven by ego, by self-interest, by the fleeting desires of the moment? As Lord Byron wisely said, the cause makes all that hallows or degrades courage in its fall. The Stoics are not concerned with the courage to stand for the sake of standing, but the courage to stand for what is right, for what promotes the common good, for what is just. Justice, according to the Stoic philosophers, is not limited to personal acts of fairness or morality. It extends beyond the individual to the greater society, for we are all members of one common body. Marcus Aurelius frequently wrote of our shared responsibility to one another. What is not good for the swarm, neither is it good for the bee. We are not solitary beings, isolated from the rest of the world. We exist in concentric circles, as Hierocles, the Stoic philosopher, described. At the center of these circles is the self, but radiating outward is the family, the community, the city, the nation, and ultimately, all of humanity. Our work as human beings is to continually expand the circles of our concern, pulling them inward, until the well-being of every person, no matter how distant or different, is as dear to us as our own. To neglect the suffering of others, to turn a blind eye to injustice simply because it does not touch our immediate lives, is to fail in our duty as rational and virtuous beings. Consider the example of John F. Kennedy's father, Joseph Kennedy, who, during his time as the U.S. ambassador to the United Kingdom, sympathized with the rise of Nazism, believing Hitler's power to be unstoppable. His inaction, his refusal to speak out against the horrors of the regime, became a moral stain that tainted his legacy. Kennedy's famous words, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing," though often misquoted, resonate with a truth that echoes through the centuries. It is not enough to simply stand aside and claim neutrality in the face of moral crises. To do so is to fail in our duty to justice, to the common good, and to the higher virtues that bind us all. In these modern times, it is tempting to withdraw into our own lives, to focus solely on our personal affairs, and ignore the broader issues that affect the collective. We may think that by remaining neutral, by choosing not to take sides, we can avoid conflict and preserve our peace. But as Marcus Aurelius reminds us, what is not good for the hive is not good for the bee. The Stoic knows that there is no true peace to be found in indifference, for indifference is a denial of our shared humanity. Justice compels us to care, to act, to speak out against wrongs, even when they do not directly affect us. As Seneca wisely said, a good character is not made by the benefits we receive, but by the use we make of them. We must look beyond ourselves and our own narrow circumstances, for the world is filled with suffering, and we are duty-bound to help alleviate it wherever we can. What then is the Stoic's role in such a world? It is not to become overwhelmed by the vastness of injustice or the enormity of suffering, but to do what we can, where we can, when we can. The Stoic recognizes that while the forces of the world are vast and beyond our control, there are still small, meaningful acts within our reach. The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it, said Epictetus. Skillful pilots gain their reputation from storms and tempests. It is through such storms that our virtues are tested, and it is in these moments of adversity that we have the opportunity to make a difference. Voting is one such means, as Marcus Aurelius advises us in his Meditations. When you have the opportunity to do good, do it. It is your duty. Yet, the Stoic's concern is not limited to politics or grand actions. It extends to every small act of kindness and justice. In a time when so many are quick to dehumanize others, the Stoic's response is to humanize, to show compassion, to recognize the shared humanity of those who are often ignored, oppressed, or cast aside. The Stoic does not wait for permission to act, nor does he concern himself with the outcomes of his actions. For it is the pursuit of justice itself that is virtuous, not the reward that follows. Consider the deeply unjust plans being discussed in some corners of the world. Plans to deport millions of people, to erase entire communities from existence. Such actions are the product of dehumanization, of reducing people to mere statistics, of treating them as less than human. As Voltaire wisely noted, he who can get you to believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. When we allow ourselves to view others as less than ourselves, when we permit cruelty to take root in our hearts, we become complicit in the wrongdoing. The Stoic does not avert his gaze from the suffering of others, but seeks to act with reason and justice, remembering that to turn a blind eye is itself a form of injustice. The Stoic is not called to save the world single-handedly, for this is beyond our power. But we are called to be a light in the darkness, a beacon of virtue in a world rife with cruelty and ignorance. We are called to expand our circles of concern, to embrace our shared humanity, and to act with justice and compassion whenever the opportunity arises. The Stoic's life is one of purpose, of commitment to the common good, and of relentless dedication to the virtues that make us human. As Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Let us take this to heart and commit ourselves with all the courage, wisdom, and justice we can muster to be the change we wish to see in the world, no matter how small our actions may seem. For it is in these small acts that the greater good is born.